I don't know about you, well, I know most of us have had this experience in which we have these really high expectations about something that's going to go on, or we've had an experience that we're excited about and we would love everybody else to have the same experience that we're having. The simplest story that I have, or image of that, is actually dealing with children, especially your own children, looking forward to the moment where they might say their first words. I don't know if you remember that, but I do, because I was very intentional in trying to get my daughter Emily to say daddy before mom. And so she'd be there, making her little baby sounds, and I would go, daddy, daddy, daddy. And she actually at one moment said, Mommy. I preached a whole sermon on that once, Mommy, and that was good enough for me. Dad was in there somewhere. And so I ran out and I said, Leslie, guess what? Emily actually spoke her first words. Come here, you gotta listen to her. And so we came in and I said, Daddy, Daddy, Daddy. And the kid looked at me like, and Leslie said, yeah, right, she's really talking, isn't she? And I said, no, she was just talking just a minute ago. Well, sure, well, invite me back when she starts talking. Leslie left the room. Have y'all been there? Where you have this experience, you want somebody else to have that experience, but it just doesn't happen? Yeah. I've had those experiences in my life. Or how about this experience I had a while back when I was in high school? There was a great movie that came out, and it was called Pee Wee Herman, A Rebel and His Bike. Anybody remember that movie? I thought it was great. I went to the movie, I was blown away. It was funny, it was sarcastic. It was written for like little kids, but it was really for adults, right? And I got out of the movie and I thought, this is the best movie ever written. And so I went to my friends, I was like, you have got to see this movie. Let's go together. And so I got them all to go with me, and we got our tickets, and we went into the movie, and we sat down, and we were watching the movie, and I could tell that the energy was getting sucked out of the room. That for some reason this group that I had brought was not quite as excited about this as I was. And so we walked out of the movie theater, and you know what they said to me? That was the worst movie I've ever seen. It felt like I'd been kicked in the gut. Have you been there in that moment where your expectations are so high? You want somebody to experience this so much. And to have that experience. And that reminded me of another time when I was in North Carolina, when I was in graduate school, and we lived in Roxborough, and it was right around this time of year. We had some friends there who found out that I had never been hunting before. And so they thought that was a great tragedy. And so we're going to take you hunting. And I'm always up for doing something once, right? And so they said, okay, well, if you want to go hunting, we want to take you. And so we would like you to meet us at this location in Roxborough at about 3:30 a.m. on Thanksgiving morning. So that's when hunting season opens. And they were excited. Oh my gosh, hunting season's about to start. There's a few folks in our room that are excited about that too. I see the energy, They're all excited. They're anticipating this great moment. And so I thought, man, I'm excited. It sounds like hunting's great, isn't it? And so I met them there at 3:30 in the morning at this little cafe in Roxborough. And we had a couple of cups of coffee, and we jumped in the truck and we went out into the woods. And so we went out into the woods and we got out of the truck, and I said, okay, what do we do? And they said, well, here's your gun. You ever used one of those before? Yeah, a long time ago. They said, don't worry about it. Just point in a direction and pull the trigger. Those are not shooting instructions, just so you know. Let me just say this about my two friends, too. They weren't necessarily the brightest guys that I ever met. And so I said, so what I do? And they said, well, you wander out in the woods somewhere, and you find a spot, and you sit in that spot, and you wait for a deer to come. Okay. Simple enough. So I set out into the woods. I find my spot, I lean against a tree, and what seemed like 5 hours passed, but it was only like 2 minutes. Those of you who know me very well know that I am not ever going to be able to sit at the base of a tree for longer than 10 minutes, okay? And so I got up and I started walking through the woods. I was like, hey, this get shot, don't worry. But I found a couple other spots where I could sit. And so then eventually time passed and we met back at the truck and they had a deer. And we gathered at the truck and they were all excited and they turned to me and they said, Roy, what did you think about hunting? And I said, this is the worst sport ever. Anybody who thinks going into the woods and just sitting there for hours waiting for a deer to come by is torture. And they looked at me and they were all kind of like they got kicked in the gut. Well, it's just because you didn't have the experience. You didn't have a deer come by. I said, well, I'm sure my adrenaline would have shot through the roof then. But are you with me? Have you been in those places where your expectations, your experience, you just want somebody else to live into that and experience it the way that you did? On the gospel text today, the story of Zacchaeus, I see a lot of that going on. I mean, I think this text actually gives testimony to the fact that we as a church sometimes set our expectations way up here. In other words, we really do want everybody in the world to experience the love of God the same way we experienced it, right? And so we're like the crowd in this story. And because our expectations are up here, or because we want other people to experience our relationship with Christ the same way we had that experience, we oftentimes get in the way. And what this story is giving testimony to is how God works beyond our expectations. How God works beyond the idea that we want to interject the love of God into other people, but rather how God meets us right where we are. And I know some of you are wondering, how is that possible in this text? But look at the text itself. I mean, look at who the primary character of the story is. It's a guy named Zacchaeus, right? It's a guy who we're told in the text very intentionally is somebody of low stature. I was going to say, I'm telling you a short story today. Now, for those of you who might be shorter, please do not take any offense. But the reality is, Zacchaeus is not the guy that any one of us would want to invite to church. Matter of fact, he's the last person we would ever want to invite to church. He's the guy that if any one of us brought him to church, the rest of us would say, why did you bring that guy here? Zacchaeus is the jerk. He's the guy that has been trying to overcompensate for his inadequacies his whole life. Matter of fact, he's strived to find power and to dominate other people through manipulation and taking advantage of people and stealing from people. He's found his life rooted in riches and wealth, and that's given him status and prestige. And guess what? The rest of the society around them look at him and point at him and say, he's not the guy that we want to be involved in our community. That guy's a tax collector and a sinner. He's a guy that nobody likes. Are you getting my point? I don't think we would take it. I think we'd struggle with Zacchaeus walking in the door. I mean, Zacchaeus comes into this story simply wanting to experience one thing. He just wants to see Jesus. He's trying to get a glimpse of Jesus. Now, a lot of us read into the story, and we also romanticize the story, don't we? We think that Zacchaeus is on a journey, a spiritual quest. He's longing to find faith. But that's not what the story tells us. It tells us simply that Zacchaeus wants to get a glimpse of this guy that he's heard about. And so he climbs up in a tree. He doesn't make his way through the crowd to the front line. He climbs up in the tree so that he can kind of stay in the back a little bit. Then he can kind of put himself over everybody else when Jesus comes walking by. Now think about people who come to church for the first time, or to come visit a church for the first time. Where do they typically like to sit? In the back. Why? Because they can hide. It's also because they can leave if things start going bad in the service, right? I mean, Methodists are known for being the back row Christians because we always want to participate in a good escape plan just in case things get too uncomfortable, right? And so that's where Zacchaeus finds himself. He never ever expects that Jesus is ever going to turn his attention towards him. He just wants to catch a glimpse of Jesus. He just wants to see Jesus. And this is where I think the text becomes really powerful. Out of all the people there that day, all the crowds gathering on the sides, all the people who think they have it all together, all the people that are there for what they believe are all the right reasons, the person that Jesus sees, the person that Jesus speaks with, is Zacchaeus. He actually goes to the anti-hero in the story, the one that nobody else wants to deal with. Why? I believe because Zacchaeus comes with pure motives. I think his heart's open to anything. Nobody's fed him a line about what church is about, who Jesus is, what he should expect. There are no expectations. Zacchaeus comes simply wanting to see. And Jesus meets him right where he is, in that tree. And that day, Jesus invites him to something. He doesn't turn to Zacchaeus in the tree and say, "Hey, Zacchaeus, believe in me and you will receive eternal life." Is that what he says to Zacchaeus? What does he say to Zacchaeus? So I'm going to your house. Why is he going to his house? Because he's hungry. He's inviting Zacchaeus into a relationship. He wants to actually get to know Zacchaeus. Because Zacchaeus is the only one there who just simply wants to see Jesus. He's the one, literally, in which nobody's really getting in his way. Now, I know in the text it says that the crowd is so thick that Zacchaeus can't see Jesus, so we assume that the crowd is getting in the way of Zacchaeus. No. Zacchaeus finds a way to see Jesus. And in his desire, in all of its purity and simplicity, Jesus meets him right there. I think sometimes we, the church, get in the way of others experiencing and encountering the love of God. I've seen it in 20 years of ministry here at Cornerstone. And a lot of it's rooted in our excitement and our desire to be excited about the church and the community that we're involved with, right? And I've heard people go, "Guess what? You need to come to Cornerstone because you won't believe this preacher. He is so good. He's got long hair and tattoos and he's kind of wild and free." And then people come and they come to worship and I see them going, "Oh, this guy's a jerk." Because people set them up. They have these expectations. Or the music, "Oh man, we've got a great church. Guess what? We sing hymns. But guess what? We also do contemporary music. And there's this great guitar player guy. And you've got to experience this. It's really cool." And people come to the church and they sit there and they go, "What's the big deal?" And yet, I guarantee you, most of you came into Cornerstone not knowing what to expect. Matter of fact, nobody set you up for failure. Nobody got in your way. And yet you came through the doors. Now, you might have been invited. "Hey, come join me at church. That's fine." But what we don't do well as a people of faith is trust that the Spirit's going to meet people right where they are. Because that's where the Spirit meets people. When they come in all of their sincerity and all of their purity and all of their genuine motives. That's where the Spirit meets people. That's when Jesus turns his attention to people. When we fill them with all these expectations about what they should do, how they should look, what church should be like, we limit that experience. Amen? Zacchaeus is in that tree without any ulterior motives. He has one. He just wants to see the dude everybody's talking about walk by. And that's when Jesus turns his attention to him. And he has this encounter with Jesus. And in that moment, because it's so pure and holy, I mean, I love the invitation, right? It's simply, can I please have some dinner with you tonight? And Zacchaeus comes down from the tree and says, sure. And as a matter of fact, he makes a new commitment. His whole life changes. He no longer has to be this guy who's always striving for stature. Jesus is seen. He's known. He's loved. Apart from what everybody else in the community might think about Zacchaeus, Jesus asked Zacchaeus to take him to his house. Zacchaeus, the dude that none of us would want to see in this place. The one we claim to be Lord and Savior goes in his kingdom. I think part of the work of the church is to get out of the way. We have to do a better job of giving people the opportunity to see Jesus for themselves. I know each and every one of us, we've all had an encounter in some way with God. And for some of us, they were really dramatic. I call them firework faith moments, where we just had an aha epiphany. God is real. God is in my life. And for some, it's been a life journey. It's been a slow process of experiencing God. But there's no right or wrong way to encounter the love of God. Amen. But we as the church, we have to have faith that in spite of us, God will meet everybody right where they are. Can we make the space for that to happen? Oh, there will be people that won't like it. Because when we offer that kind of space and that kind of freedom to say, guess what? Your relationship with God is your relationship. And how God speaks to you is the way God speaks to you. It means that people like Zacchaeus might actually show up. And everybody will grumble. At that point, I'll say, go stand on the corner of the parade with everybody else. While Jesus and Zacchaeus, they're going to his house for dinner. I think I want to join them there. To the glory of God. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen.